All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are live. Welcome back to the Cold Country Podcast, a special edition of the Cold Country Podcast, where we discuss everything WVU sports. I'm your host, Ian McIntyre. Joining me is Tyler Cobb. How we doing, Tyler?
I'm happy to be here in honor of Matt Howe.
I'm conflicted, to be honest with you, because in this BYU game, it's so weird. It brings a lot of things to look forward to, but it also brings a lot of despair that we may get blown out, which honestly we probably
For the third
will
row as well.
for the third time in a row. Yeah, what is our average deficit been over the last 3 games? It has to be something ridiculous.
Well, it was what, 41-10 against Kansas?
41-10 against Kansas and
48-14 against Utah. So around the 30 mark.
That's just not good, especially opening up Big 12 play. You can't do that in any conference, but especially the Big 12 in a conference.
And the spread against BYU kind of shows that, because we were sitting at minus 19.5 point underdogs.
Yeah, and it's not a fun place to be. And honestly, I'm surprised it's not bigger, to be honest with you. So, before we go ahead and get going on the analysis of the game, thank you for joining us live. If you're watching on X, thank you for watching on X. Go over to YouTube and check out our page. Maybe subscribe, like the video. Also, if you are watching on X, had a little bit of difficulties getting the stream up initially. So thanks for hanging in there and joining us. We're also live on Instagram. Go follow us over there. And this will be posted to our Spotify after we are done. So, and also coming up tonight, Thursday Night Football. So we do have some football tonight, and then the Mountaineers right after. Late game on the East Coast, though, 10:30 p.m. At least it is on ESPN. We're probably going to get a lot of viewers for that, at least, and hopefully we put on a good show for those viewers, but I don't know, man.
I don't know either. Got a lot of problems to solve up against a BYU team that has a lot of talent and has looked really solid thus far, and that's even with a freshman quarterback and getting it done. So we've got a tough task ahead of us.
Yeah, we do, for sure. Actually, I just thought, before we jump into the game, do we want to talk about our recent quarterback developments and what has happened in the past 24, 48 hours here?
Yes, let's go Nico Marchiol.
All right, so and it come out, I saw it first yesterday afternoon that Nico was expected, not guaranteed, but expected to hit the transfer portal. This obviously comes shortly after news that he took a medical red shirt. Not a great situation for the Mountaineers to be in, especially when you're already looking for depth at the quarterback position, and arguably your most consistent guy on the field is leaving. Now, obviously, he's injured. We don't know the extent of his injury, but it was obviously enough to keep him off the field for a considerable amount of weeks. And even if he could come back, in my opinion, he's doing what's best for him, because why would you want to come back to a system and a team that necessarily wasn't working for you all season? So I get it from his perspective, and I don't like to see all the negativity on social media about Nico leaving, because I'm not necessarily happy that he decided to redshirt and will probably enter the portal, but he's doing what is in his best interest, and he's not pulling a Tucker DeVries either. I've seen a lot of that. I don't think he's pulling a Tucker DeVries. That was an entirely different situation. But I wish him the best in wherever he chooses to go.
I as well. It's a tricky situation. I don't want to say that this was his plan all along, but it did kind of feel like it came at a weird time, because it does come. He obviously was a little dinged up, but it just so happened that he got dinged up right before the 4-game mark for the red shirt. So I'm not saying that Nico had planned all along to transfer, but maybe he was, going to give us the 4 games, see how the start of the season went, if he thought he could be successful in this season. And then maybe he just decided that it wasn't for him. So it's like I said, it's a tricky situation. In no way does it feel like, a kind of like a backstabbing type of thing from Nico, whereas some previous transfers have. So I do wish Nico the best. It sucks because, Nico was supposed to be that guy moving forward, right? Everybody thought to start the season that it would be Nico. Many people were calling for Nico to get the job last year when Garrett was having some struggles. And obviously he didn't, but he was loyal. He waited for his turn. He got it. Obviously not the type of quarterback for this system. I do still think that he can be a talented quarterback in a system that does fit him. So I agree. I wish him the best of luck moving forward. I hope for a quick recovery for whatever injury he is dealing with. And wherever he ends up or decides to go following this season, I hope he finds some success there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely still going to root for him. I mean, if we play him, like if he goes to the Big 12, one of the potential landing spots I saw for him would be Arizona. If we play Arizona, yeah, I want to beat the crap out of him because Nico's playing for him. But at the same time, I'm going to be rooting him on because I do feel bad for the way things ended for him here, and how he sat behind Garrett Green for 2 years, right? Like he didn't have to stay here. He didn't have to be backup. He could have started for someone else, but he chose to stay here and learn from Garrett Green and learn from Neil Brown's system. And then whenever Rich Rod came in and the script was flipped, he stayed. And that was a difficult decision for him to make, I'm sure. I mean, did he know he was going to be the starter? Probably. And that's why he wanted to stay, because he knew he had a better shot at being the starter this year than he did the past 2 years. But at the same time, he wanted to give Rich Rod a chance and give this new system a chance, and it just didn't work out. So it is what it is on that front.
Yeah. What I will say is that, with every dark time, there is always light at the end of the tunnel. Like I said, I do wish Nico a speedy recovery with whatever injury he's dealing with. It sucks that's how your West Virginia career is going to end. But it opens up the window for one of the young guys to maybe step up and show that they can be the quarterback of the future. More specifically for Khalil against BYU. I do have one question I want to ask before we get to the BYU and more about Khalil Wilkins, and that is, in 10 years, when you look back, who are you going to remember more? Are you going to remember Garrett Green because he was the starter for a lot longer, despite having, not the greatest of end to his West Virginia career? He did have the one pretty solid 2023 season, a lot of hype into 2024, and then it didn't exactly live up to it. He had a lot. I think Garrett was the overall better quarterback, but something that Nico has that Garrett does not is he is 2-0 against Pitt, whereas Garrett is 0-1, right? And so despite Garrett, in my opinion, being the better quarterback, when you look back, who will you remember more fondly, Nico or Garrett?
It's an interesting question. We talked about this last night or the other night, and it's hard to put my finger on because both quarterbacks are going to be legendary in their own right. And what Nico did a few weeks ago against Pitt, whoever was there and whoever was watching on TV, you're going to remember that for a long time, the way that he was able to will us back and win that game in OT. And he can always say he's 2-0 against Pitt. And yep. I believe that Nico fits the mantra of once a Mountaineer, always a Mountaineer. I think he's one of those guys that fits that mantra. But for me, I feel like I'm going to remember Garrett Green more than Nico. And again, that's not taking a shot at Nico because Nico is insane in his legacy, especially with Pitt. But with Garrett, that 2023 season, was so good. It's probably going to be one of the best things that he looks back at once he's done with his pro career in football right now. He's going to look back at that 2023 season and probably be like, man, that was some of the best football I ever played was in 2023. And I loved watching all of those games, bar the Oklahoma game. I think it was Oklahoma game that we got blown out in. Yeah, bar that game. Every other game was great. The Mayo Bowl, me and you were both there, and that was your first bowl game.
Yep.
That was, dude, that first play, the first play of the entire game, that trick play, I don't know how I could get much better than that. That was awesome. And I think that's going to be what I remember Garrett for. And when I think back on the past 10 years of WVU football from this point, I'm going to want to immediately go think about that Mayo Bowl win and how much it meant to the fan base. And going into 2024, there was so much hype around Garrett that even people like Joel Klatt were calling him a Heisman dark horse. Like, it was crazy. Now, obviously, that did not pan out whatsoever.
Yep.
But the fact that he was in that conversation, even just for a little bit, and, Nico was never really in a conversation to be, like one of the nation's best quarterbacks or even like one of the Big 12's best quarterbacks. And he struggled a lot this year. And I think a lot of people who watch WVU football on any regular basis are going to more remember him for what he didn't do this year rather than what he did, which is sad. But I think for me, I'm going to remember Garrett Green more than Nico.
I'm pretty similar, and for a lot of the same reasons. 23 was obviously my first year attending West Virginia, being a part of the Pride, and so that was my first time attending basically a full season outside of the away games, and so along with the fact that I do think Garrett was the better quarterback and he played for a lot longer. A lot of the things you said, there were plenty of moments that year that I felt stuck out to me more than what the moments Nico has had will stick out to me. However, you said it earlier, once a Mountaineer, always a Mountaineer. While that has become less true in the modern era of college football, because you could have a player here 1 year and then the next year he's gone. You could have a recruit be here for 1 year, not ever see the field, and he's gone. And so I don't know if the once a Mountaineer, always a Mountaineer mantra applies anymore. But for Nico Marchiol, it certainly does because of those 2 wins over Pitt. A lot of West Virginia quarterbacks cannot say that they are undefeated against Pitt. And Nico is in that club now. So while once a Mountaineer, always a Mountaineer may not be true for everybody anymore, it is certainly true for Nico Marchiol 8-ball.
One thing I'll also give Nico credit for was his mantra and his aura coming out of high school into the Mountaineers, like whenever he committed here, right? Like, I think you remember all the highlight tapes and the stories about Nico in high school when he committed here. And, he was one of those guys that had an aura on the football team, even though he wasn't playing. Like, exactly what I'm talking about.
He did. I don't know if I would use aura, but
I'm telling you, dude. I'm telling you.
He did seem to have that, rally cry for the team. He was able to bring everybody together and fight for one common goal. And I do think that all started with his comeback victory in his senior year of high school when he threw up all over the ball. His team recovered 2 onside kicks. It started there, and then obviously it ends with his 10-point comeback and then overtime victory against Pitt. So I do know what you're talking about, but I don't know if I would use the word aura.
Dude, the way that we hyped him up, you got to use the word aura. There are too many people on the team that you could just be like, oh man, he doesn't play very much. But even though Nico wasn't playing, you knew he was there. He had a presence, especially to that locker room.
Fair enough.
All right, well, that should do it for us talking about Nico. We will miss Nico. Rip 8-ball. as the scroll says. And we'll go ahead and get into this BYU game now. So, you went on Kuz's show the other day, which shout out to Kuz. Thank you so much for having Tyler on and shouting us out, allowing Tyler to shout us out. That was awesome. And you talked a lot about your keys to the game, key matchups, players, everything like that. But I think one of the things I agreed with you the most on is the fact that if WVU wants any hope in this game of being competitive, you have to come out and start quickly.
Yes, you do. That was probably my first. I think that was my first key to the game, and probably one of the most important because it is extremely hard to play from behind on the road. And Kuz actually brought something to my attention when we mentioned that West Virginia is 2-0 when we have scored on our opening drive and 0-3 when we have not. And something I thought about bringing up, it did not. However, I will now, is that as much crap as we give Neil Brown and as mediocre as we were in those 6 years, Neil Brown was one of the best coaches at scripting up that opening drive. It felt like every game, it felt like we were flipping the field or scoring on the opening drive, like driving down the field and getting some points at the very least. And so, can you start fast? It is going to be extremely important to start fast and try to get some points on the board the first, second, and third time you touch the ball. Because if you get behind 10, 14 points against this BYU team that loves to control the clock, they don't necessarily go fast. They are a team that doesn't give away many turnovers. They only have one fumble on the year, and Bear Bachmeier has taken care of the ball. He's not thrown any interceptions. And so you can't get behind early. You have got to find a way to get some points on the board in the first, second quarter, and at least keep the game close going into halftime against this BYU team.
Yeah, and I think also our secondary is going to be something that Bear Bachmeier has to contend with. Now, I know our defense definitely didn't play the best against Utah and looked questionable in the second half during Kansas, but I think this is going to be one of the better defenses that he will face. And so if we can use our secondary to make Bear question his reads, then I think we stand a good chance in this game defensively. And when it comes to starting fast as well, Rich Rod's style of offense, I think, is perfect for that. Because if you go and get a big first down and you're clapping and you're going right back to the line and calling a play, it's also going to take that crowd out of it, which I know you said Lavelle Edwards is an underrated place to play. And that crowd's going to be bumping, especially at 8:30 local kickoff and a night game for BYU. And it's going to be a huge, huge conference game. They're going to be looking to take care of business. The crowd's going to do everything they can to keep that team in it. If you come out and get a couple big first downs while you're running tempo, that crowd ain't going to know what hit them, let alone the team. So you can try to do a good job and take that crowd out of it as well. I think that's an underrated aspect to the game.
And that is going to fall a lot on Khalil Wilkins and Ty Edwards. Is Rich Rod going to have Khalil ready to go play in that kind of atmosphere, right? BYU is known for being an extremely tough place to play at night. They do not lose night games in their home stadium very often. And so does Khalil Wilkins go out and look poised like he did in that late game against Utah, or does the crowd get to him? Does the crowd get to the O-line? Do we get a couple false starts early? Or can Khalil go back there, look poised, make a couple plays? Can Ty Edwards, get a few big runs like he did against Pitt, and you kind of get the offense rolling? Ty Edwards right now is listed as probable. We saw him listed as probable for Kansas and then not play. He was dressed for Utah and did not play. So hopefully Ty Edwards will be back. And if Ty Edwards is back, that is a huge, huge thing for Khalil Wilkins, because he knows that the offense is not going to fall on him and basically him and Cam Vaughn, right? He's going to have Ty Edwards to hand the ball off to, and know that Ty Edwards can take a hit and still get some tough yardage, even if it's ground and pound, 3-4 yards at a time, right? And so having Ty Edwards back will be huge if he does actually play this time.
Yeah, 100%. I think any person that knows anything about football will tell you that offensively, balance is what you need to be successful on offense. You need a good balance between running and throwing, and that is especially important for a freshman like Khalil Wilkins. He needs somebody who's going to be able to run the ball consistently, like you said, 3, 4, 5 yards a carry. So that'll keep the passing lanes open as well, and try to at least get some easy reads and try to get Cam Vaughn open on a few deep balls. That's super, super important. Cam Vaughn has not, I don't think he has yet shown what he is truly capable of, especially the problems that we've had in the QB room thus far. And, with Nico done for the year and Henderson being listed as out, which, by the way, I don't know exactly why he's listed out. That's one thing I just haven't seen, but I saw that he was listed out. But, Khalil's probably going to be your consistent starter from now on. So with that type of consistency, can we open up this pass game and give Cam Vaughn a chance to show off what he's truly capable of? And again, if he wants to, that comes back to what we can do in the run game. Can we get Ty Edwards back on in the field, number one? But then can he go right back to what he was so good at doing against Pitt? He's going to be facing a better defense this time at BYU if he actually comes out and plays. So he also has something to prove as well. Ty Edwards does. Can he replicate his performance against Pitt? It may not have to be 141 yards and 3 touchdowns like he had, but he needs to be effective and give this offense a chance in the passing game to spread out the BYU defense a little bit and just keep them on their toes. I think that's super important too.
What I will say is, you mentioned Pitt. This BYU linebacker core is very similar. That's the strength of their defense. Similar to Pitt, but Jack Kelly and Isaiah Glasker, the two leading linebackers for BYU, are the real deal. They're NFL talent linebackers. Jack Kelly through 4 games has 19 total tackles and 4 sacks, and Glasker has 17 total tackles, 2 sacks, and an interception. And so it is going to be very important to see some improvements from this offensive line, because you do not want to send a redshirt freshman quarterback out there and early him take a couple sacks early or a couple tackle for losses early and lose confidence. And so I think in that game against Utah later in the game, you saw Malik Agbo and you saw Donovan Haslam, and then obviously Carson Lee for Landon Livingston, who's been banged up. Malik Agbo and Donovan Haslam impressed me. Not necessarily, I don't think that they're incredible offensive linemen, or they didn't show me that they can be, some of the best linemen in the Big 12, but they did seem to be an improvement from what is Chemo and Tykees Crawford. I thought Malik Agbo looked super athletic. He was the one who had that lead block for Jared Bowie on that 68-yard run. And then Donovan Haslam is just a big guy in that offensive line that can just is tough to move backwards for the BYU. That is going to be tough to move backwards for that BYU defensive line. And so does Rich Rod go with who he's been starting, or does he go with a little bit more of a change up? Does he get Malik Agbo some more snaps? Does he still roll with Donovan Haslam, which I believe Chemo Makanaole is listed as probable along with Ty Edwards. And so if Chemo is full to go back this week, does he go with Chemo again, or does he see what Donovan Haslam can do? If my opinion is that you rock with Malik Agbo and Donovan Haslam until you can't, because we've seen what this offensive line was with the original starting 5, and
yeah, 100%.
It was anything but pretty. So I think you try anything to get the offense rolling and to give Ty Edwards and Khalil Wilkins some space in the run game and Khalil some time in the passing game.
Yeah, I think that a change on the offensive line, even against a tougher BYU team, is probably necessary given what we've seen so far. And I liked that Malik Agbo was one of your key players in Kuz's show. Speaking of Kuz, thank you for the comment, sir. I guess Jalen was banged up in the Utah game. I didn't watch very much of Coach Rod's presser, so yeah, thanks for bringing that to my attention. So now we know what Henderson is dealing with. Hopefully he comes back soon, because it would be nice to have that running option. And Khalil can run.
Even
as
then,
well.
even if we continue to rock with Leo, we are thin at quarterback right now.
Yeah.
We are. Max Brown is questionable, and so if he can't go, you've got Khalil, Scotty in your quarterback room.
Right.
So
Max Brown's banged up too, right?
Yeah, he's listed as questionable. So you're pretty thin. Don't go out there and injure your only two quarterbacks you've got left.
Yeah, and it's a delicate balance that you got to strike on offense in this game. And number one, like we said before, you got to start fast on offense. Moving over to the defense, so we'll talk a little bit about them. I mentioned before that the secondary is going to play a key part in this game. And what do the Mountaineers have to do against BYU's O-line? Like, what does our front seven have to do to put pressure on Bear? Because, like you said, he hasn't thrown any interceptions. How do we achieve that?
Well, you need to force some pressure. I'd be looking at Jamori, because he's been quiet in the two games that has had some snaps so far. Right, he was supposed to be able to come in and be an immediate impact guy, and thus far has not been so. So, can Jamori take a step up and live up to the expectations we had preseason? And then, obviously, what do you see Zach Alley dial up? Is he going to go with a more pressure-heavy offense or defense to try to force Bear into some bad decisions, or does he try to clog the passing lanes? Right. Like you mentioned, and I've mentioned, Bear has not thrown an interception. I will say, if you go back and watch the Colorado game, he tried to force some balls, and they were really good throws, but the defender was right there and just missed it, right? And so if you can get some pressure on Bear, maybe force the freshman into some bad throws, you can get a turnover or two, because if you want to win this game, you've got to try to find some form of play on either defense or special teams to light a fire under the team, right? You're going to need either a kick return, a punt return, some kind of defensive touchdown. That feels like we've mentioned this for the Kansas and Utah game. This offense has been rough, and so you need to find a way to score some points, or at least get the offense close on defense for the offense to get going. So force some bad throws from Bear. What I will say as well is you've got to be a little bit better in coverage. I thought Devin Dampier did a really good job dicing up the West Virginia secondary.
Absolutely.
However, Michael Coates and Jason Chambers have been two bright spots in that secondary regardless, right? And so their premier wide receiver is Chase Roberts, who had a heck of a year last year and has done pretty well up to this point this year. Can you keep him out of the equation? Bear is going to look to him as his go-to guy, and then probably the next guy that he's going to want to go to a lot is tight end Carson Ryan. He's got 12 catches on the year through 4 games, and that is just under 200 yards. That's going to be a big target that he's going to want to find if nobody else is open. Similar to how Garrett used Cole Taylor in 23 and 24. It was just a big body that you knew was going to catch the ball if you threw it his way, right? So you've got to find a way to keep Chase Roberts and Carson Ryan out of the equation. And Michael Coates and Jason Chambers, as much as Devin Dampier kind of diced up the West Virginia secondary, that I have faith in Coates and Chambers to at least lock down their portion of the field.
Yeah. What I don't think we can allow are the gaps in the coverage that we saw against Utah. Again, like you said, Dampier did a fantastic job of finding our weaknesses, and obviously at a certain point in the game, it didn't really matter. Yes, Scotty Keene better be ready. And wouldn't surprise me. And it's so on brand for West Virginia to have such an unfortunate event happen where, Scotty comes in and hurts his hand or something. It is so on brand for WVU. So
But the way the injuries have hit us this year, I wouldn't be surprised if something happened. So
I know, and it's so sad to say, but you're not you're not wrong. Um, anyway, with this defense, the secondary has to step up and get some pass deflections because, like you said, Bear can throw the ball and he can slot it right where the defender can't get to it. So it's going to be really important for people like Michael Coates to make a play. Um, what I will say as well is Bear is a freshman, right? I think in my mind that has to come into play somewhere because this is his second conference game. I know it's at home and they were on the road in Colorado last time, and that's an environment in itself. But the freshman quarterback aspect, I think, will come into play at some point this season. It may not against us because we're the Mountaineers, but I think it could play a role potentially in this game. He's facing a better secondary, and I think Colorado's secondary was. He's facing a better secondary at West Virginia. So how does he respond to our pass coverage? And again, Zach Alley knows how to make those schemes work. And I think he has been studying as much as he can in this short week, as with the rest of the defense, trying to figure out what he can do against Bear Bachmeier and especially how to get pressure on him. Because the more you pressure him, the more he's going to make a bad decision. So those are my two keys to the defense.
I'll say again, we've mentioned it in both of the shows we did with Coos and Saturday's Warrior. This defense has been struggling to tackle, and BYU has one of the premier backs in the Big 12 in LJ Martin, who has had the best start to his year out of all 3 years he's played for BYU. He is averaging 7.3 yards per carry, which is impressive in its own right. But when you look at how many yards per carry he's averaging after contact, which is 5, that makes it even more ridiculous. And for a team that has been struggling to tackle the ball, you better look for LJ Martin to get 20 plus carries this game. What I will say for BYU is they have also dealt with some injuries at that running back position. They are very thin after LJ Martin, right? So can LJ Martin, handle that load of getting 20 plus carries against a defense that, while has been struggling to tackle the ball, will go out and hit hard? We've seen plenty of, of hits that give you that, gruesome look on your face. They're like, is that guy alive? Right. And so LJ Martin is going to have to be ready to get a lot of carries, and West Virginia is going to have to be ready to wrap up, hit hard, fly around, play fast. If you can find a way to at least somewhat limit LJ Martin and force Bear to make some difficult throws while he's under pressure from Jamori, Eddie Vesteranen, Fred Perry on some nickel blitzes, right? I think that is how you win the game, right? Limit LJ Martin as best as you can and force Bear into some mistakes that he has not had. He hasn't really had to try to force the ball so far. And so try to make him force the ball into some tight windows and make some plays and force a turnover. We have forced a turnover in every game thus far, right? And so there should be at least one. I'm thinking you're going to need more than one. Can the offense capitalize when the defense does inevitably force something?
Yeah, and I know you say this on Kuz's show as well, and it seems like the past few games we are starting so backed up in our own territory whenever we get the ball versus Kansas and Utah and even Pitt to that extent starting at midfield or even in our territory a little bit. That's going to be super important because if you can start closer to the enemy territory, then that should give the offense some confidence to go out and run plays and run good plays at that. It'll get everybody more momentum on offense to do something with the ball rather than just seeing 80 yards in front of them and going 3 and out and punting the ball because you can't move the ball that far. That was especially the case in the Utah game until Khalil came in. So field position is going to play a big role in this game as well. And if the defense forces a turnover, which I tend to agree with you, we're going to have to force at least one turnover to help get points on the board. can they get that turnover in enemy territory?
Let's hope so.
That's the defense is going to be one I hang my hat on for a while now, as I think everybody can agree for now. The defense is the best part of your game, and hopefully, with Khalil coming in, the offense can get a spark over the next few games, even if we take some losses and we see some improvement on that side of the ball. We can go ahead and move into keys to the game.
Oh, we gave our keys to the game.
I have another key to give then.
All right. Well, you give it.
I have another key to give. So offensive line is going to be super important. Khalil is going to be super important. And the defense is going to be super important. But if Ty Edwards isn't available for this game, where do you go for the run? And I think that if you're Dior Hubbard, if you're Clay Ash, you got to be ready. And I know that you were not thrust into a starting position as of yet until we've dealt with Jaheim and Ty Edwards. But this is, besides Pitt, the biggest game we've played so far, especially after what we're coming off of with Kansas and Utah. So you guys got to be ready to come out and perform and try to perform against BYU and try to get us some consistency in the run game. Because, again, as I mentioned earlier, that's going to give Khalil confidence. That's going to give him the confidence and ability to make deeper passes or more accurate passes. So if you're those guys, if you're Clay Ashby or Hubbard, you got to be ready to play.
That's a good one. I've harped on Clay Ash enough and the struggles he's been having, so I won't continue to go at him. But Dior Hubbard, through the 2 games that he has been given opportunities, I will say I have been impressed with him, right? He got only 3 carries against Kansas, but he got 10 carries against Utah, and he averaged, I believe, 6.1 yards a carry. On the year, he's averaging 5.9 yards a carry. And so in the limited amount of time that Dior Hubbard has been given, I have been impressed with him. And so you're right. If Ty Edwards is not able to go, and even if Ty Edwards is able to go, he can't take every snap. And so one of those guys has got to step up because Khalil can't do it on his own. If he starts pulling at every play like Jalen Henderson did, the defense is going to know that you are completely one-dimensional and just, go after the quarterback on the run game every play. So you're exactly right. That is a good one as well. Whoever the running back is, whether it be Ty Edwards or Dior Hubbard or Clay Ash, they've got to step up and make sure that this offense is able to run the ball a little bit better than what we've been able to thus far.
Yeah. It comes down a lot to this run game. So that is going to be our preview on the BYU game. So let us know what you think about anything that we've said. Leave your thoughts down below. Comment anything about BYU that you would like us to cover. Or if you disagree with us, let us know too, because, people have their opinions. So let us know all of that. All right. Now, for our final segment, we're going to go ahead and do Week 6 college football pick'ems. So these are going to be off the top of the head. Tyler, I assume you got the list ready to go. So I'm just going to be making my picks.
You and Matt both took a pretty decent lead on me last week. I had a rough week, going 3-7, and both of you shot above 500. So I currently sit at 27-23. The losses keep creeping up on me. You set at 32-18, and Matt sits one behind you at 31-19. So you, Matt, are doing pretty solid, and
We're on the same page.
Floating just above 500, but as I've been going the last couple of weeks, it has not been pretty.
You're above 500.
I am above 500.
You're above 500.
Starting out, we have game day is headed to Alabama for Diego Pavia and the Commodores to take on the Crimson Tide. Does Crimson Tide get revenge, or does Pavia do it again?
I love Pavia. I really do. I think he's a tremendous quarterback, especially in the SEC. Who would have projected him last year to do as good as he's done? This is a great game day pick and a great game to go to in general. However, I think you're right. Alabama gets revenge in this game. It's at Alabama, and Vanderbilt, I think at some point has to falter. And I hate to say it, but Alabama is just one of those teams. So I'm going to pick Alabama.
I expect it to be a little scary for Alabama. It's going to be a close game. Diego Pavia has proven over and over again that he is the guy for Vanderbilt and he can get it done. But that atmosphere at Alabama against this team is going to be a little bit too much to handle. Alabama, I would have honestly thought about picking Vanderbilt had Alabama not beaten Georgia last week. That is a lot more impressive of a win than I think some are realizing. And so I'm going to go with Alabama as well. What many thought should have been game day this week. Miami, Carson Beck travels to Florida State, who is coming off a tough road loss to Virginia in overtime. So who do you got?
So Florida State and Miami, one of the great all-time rivalries in college football. So many games decided on missed field goals. I actually saw a video just earlier today of how many missed field goals have decided the fate of Florida State and Miami. And because of how good I think Miami is and how Florida State is on the comeback and they look really good, it's hard for me to pick. However, I'm going to go Miami. Based on what I saw earlier today, it's a hunch, but it seemed like Florida State was losing a lot of those games. And in a rivalry game as important as this one is, history matters. And I'm going to take Miami.
This one was tough for me because I do think Miami is the better team. But good teams don't lose twice in a row. So I'm going to rock with Florida State at home, hoping that they are able to bounce back off of what seemed like a trap game loss. You actually called the Virginia and Florida State game being closer than what I expected. But I'm going to roll with Florida State to get their lick back, and they find a way against Miami at home. Moving on, two teams that have kind of disappointed up to this point. That being Texas and Florida. Florida was preseason ranked top 25, and they currently sit at 1-3. Texas sits at 3-1, however, have not looked up to their usual self. So could be a closer matchup than what I think some expect. Who do you
got? Is this game in Texas?
This is at Florida.
At Florida, at the Swamp. Okay. This is going to be a big game for Arch Manning. We're going to get to see what he's truly made of under pressure because Florida is going to come out angry. They're looking for something to build upon with this season. They haven't beaten anybody. So Florida is going to come out mad, and they're going to be in their home environment. However, I think Texas is the better team right now. Florida has more potential to be the better team. You look at their roster. Look at Florida's roster, and you would think they're the better team on paper. However, I think Texas is the better team. But with this being in Gainesville, I might actually go with the Gators here.
So you're rocking with the Gators?
I'm rocking with the Gators.
I was going to rock with the Gators, but my gut just said that the Longhorns will find a way, even on the road. Florida has not looked good this far. DJ Lagway was supposed to be a Heisman candidate going into it and has just not lived up to those expectations. Same goes for Arch Manning. He has not lived up to his expectations either. But Texas's defense is still Texas's defense. They have the talent to win the game. Will they go on the road and execute? I'm going to rock with Texas. So that brings us to another SEC game. Mississippi State, kind of the surprise of the year, travels to Texas A&M, who has looked very, very good. Mississippi State loses a nail-biter in overtime last week against Tennessee, and Texas A&M just continues to roll. Is currently undefeated. So who do you have?
This is I think, going to be another game that will be closer than meets the eye right now. However, I have Texas A&M pulling this one out. Again, the home environment is going to play a huge role in this game, and Mississippi State is going to have to climb more mountains to get to where they want to be, and I think Texas A&M is one of those mountains, and they might stumble. I'm taking Texas A&M here.
I'm also going to roll with A&M. Mississippi State has surprised me so far. I did not expect them to be in a game with Tennessee, and I think at this point they've proven that their win against Arizona State was not a fluke. And so it could be a lot closer than I think A&M fans will be comfortable with, but I like what Mike Elko has done with that organization. So I'm going to rock with Texas A&M as well. That brings us to Big 12 play. Texas Tech travels to Houston. Both teams undefeated. Houston has turned a lot of heads to start the year. Texas
Dude,
Tech.
our power rankings, right? Our power rankings preseason were so off.
Very bad.
Yeah,
Very bad.
they were very bad rankings.
Anyway, Texas Tech, the money spenders travel to Houston, who has turned some heads in the Big 12 and completely blown expectations out of the water to start the year. Who do you have?
Although this game is at Houston, I have Texas Tech here. They look like the clear Big 12 front runner. They made Utah look like they didn't know what they were doing in the fourth quarter at home. Texas Tech is just so good on both sides of the ball, but looking at their offense, they're loaded. And Houston, again, like you said, is good in their own right. They've turned heads in the conference. However, I think Texas Tech displays their might against Houston. Do I think it's going to be an absolute blowout? No. But I think it can be a 2-score game at the least. Give me Texas Tech.
I'm also going to rock with Texas Tech. Like you said, Tech has just been so good on both sides of the ball thus far. They have not shown a ton of errors or weak points. And as good as Houston has looked at certain times, they also were in a nail biter with a really bad Oregon State team. And so there are clearly some challenges on that Houston team still. So I'm going to rock with Texas Tech, although I do think that Houston will still – this will be the first year that they make a bowl game after joining the Big 12. I wouldn't be surprised if they get to the 8-win mark, maybe even 9. So look out for Houston to be one of those teams that surprises people late into the season if they haven't surprised you already. Next up, we've got Iowa State traveling to Cincinnati. Iowa State still undefeated, however, has had some close games, including a game against Kansas State overseas. And then they obviously had a nail-biter with Arkansas State that they weren't so happy about, whereas Cincinnati just pulled off an upset against a very high-powered Kansas offense. So, Iowa State or Cincinnati?
I'm going to go with Iowa State. Iowa State has not won games in necessarily dominating fashion. So far, they had a tough week 0 matchup and have withstood the Irish curse that comes from week 0. They're undefeated. And I think even though Cincinnati kept it close last week, I think that Iowa State still comes out with a win here. And I think they have the potential to meet Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship. So give me Iowa State.
I think this Cincinnati team is similar to Houston, has struggled since joining the Big 12, but this seems to be the year they can turn stuff around. They lost a really close game to Nebraska to start the year, and they obviously upset Kansas on the road last week. And so I'm going to rock with Cincinnati to pull it off again. They get the home field advantage against an Iowa State team that has looked sketchy at times. So I'm gonna go with Cincinnati to find a way to pull off the upset.
Fair enough. Kansas is no slouch. Kansas is no slouch.
Hey, quality loss for West Virginia. We've got Virginia goes to Louisville. Louisville still sits undefeated. Virginia coming off a big win against Florida State at home in overtime. Could be a sleeper game of the week. I would look for this one to be a fun game. So Virginia or Louisville.
And Virginia being ranked, a lot of people are going to be looking for Virginia to try to walk into Louisville and quote unquote take care of business, right? Because Louisville is somehow undefeated and not ranked. It's one of those questionable AP decisions. But then again, there are so many things wrong with the AP, as we've discussed before, that it's all weird. Anyway, I think Louisville, especially being at home, actually beats Virginia, which is technically an upset. But I think Louisville wins this game. Virginia, comes back down to earth, and they realize that they're still really good, but, they're not on top of the world yet. I think Louisville has this game.
Louisville was in a tough game last week with Pitt, and they find a way to pull it off on the road. Like I said, it's going to be a fun game to watch. I would not be surprised if it kind of is a high-scoring game, gets into the high 30s, even 40s. I'm going to go with Louisville. I just think that home field advantage is what's going to pull it away for them. But don't take away from what Virginia has been able to accomplish this year.
Yes, 100%.
Virginia is going to be a team that could find a way to upset some teams down the stretch, play a factor in who ends up being in the ACC championship. Maybe not for themselves, but they upset a team here and there, they could get somebody else kicked out of the ACC championship. So don't take anything away from Virginia. The home field crowd is just going to be a little bit too much for them. So I'm going to go with Louisville as well. Boise State travels to Notre Dame. Both teams have disappointed so far this year. Boise State obviously number 25 in the preseason and then gets blown out by USF. Notre Dame was top 5, I believe, preseason and currently sits at 2-2. So who do you have?
Boise State, Notre Dame. I don't know why. It's just an interesting game to me, maybe because of the playoffs last year and how Boise State might have gotten screwed over with their seeding. But
they got a bye, man. What are you talking about?
Well, they got a bye, but you have to play such a hard team from the position that you're in because, you're number 4 in the bye, which means you have to play the hardest team coming out of that first round. So, whenever you're a group of 5 team, dude, there's not much you can do. There just really isn't. Even against James Franklin, who can't seem to win big games. So that's besides the point. Give me Notre Dame here. I think, Boise State is still good. I think Boise State can still be a good team. However, I don't think this is their year where they're nationally relevant. And I think Notre Dame, who had such a tough start to the year going 0-2, is going to have to look at games on their schedule and point at them and say, yeah, we can get right there. And I think Boise State's one of those games. So give me the Irish.
I'm going to go Notre Dame pretty comfortably.
Yeah.
This is one that, you look at the 2 teams and supposedly they're supposed to be 2 good teams. If Boise State had found a way to win against USF, which it wasn't even close, and they were undefeated, maybe, but even then it would have been a tough task because you're going on the road. So I'm going to say Notre Dame comfortably, probably more than 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Notre Dame. Washington travels to Maryland, who is undefeated. How about them Terrapins? Washington.
I don't like Maryland, man. I don't like Maryland. Whenever I was in my freshman year in the band, we had to go to Maryland and watch that game, and the fans were not very nice to me, to put it lightly. And as my first experience in the band, that sucked. Anyway, Maryland's undefeated. We know they're a good team this year. I don't think they'll be competing for the Big Ten title, obviously, but they're a good team. Washington, who had an opportunity, they didn't, but had an opportunity to maybe beat Ohio State last week in their own stadium, is traveling to Maryland and thinking, hey, this is also a good team, and they're not Ohio State. So we have a way better shot here to win this game. However, for me, it's just a toss-up, dude. Like, both of these teams are solid. A lot of people, I've seen a few people are trying to make the case for Maryland to be ranked, which I don't necessarily disagree with. They're one of those Louisville teams where they're undefeated and have just looked good thus far, but don't quite have the resume. I think I'm going to take Washington here out of my gut feeling.
I've been high on Washington all year, and I'm going to remain high on them even after that Ohio State game. I thought they had opportunities to try to find a way against Ohio State late into the third and even early into the fourth, but just couldn't do it. But that's a good Ohio State team. And so to even be in a game with Ohio State that late into it is something in itself. I love what this Washington team has put out on the field so far. And while Maryland has been better than I expected, I'm going to go with the Huskies again this week, and hopefully they do not upset my hopes and dreams like they did last week.
Your hopes and dreams. Your whole life was riding on that Ohio State game, and you lost. You lost.
Hey man, I really like this Washington team.
They're good.
That brings us to game of the week that happens to have a 20-point spread. West Virginia goes to BYU. Will they continue the streak of getting blown out, or will they find a way to upset the Cougs in their home stadium? Bear Bachmeier, can you find a way to force him to make some errors? Who do you have? What's your score prediction? Who wins?
So I love the Mountaineers. I'll just get that out of the way. I really love the Mountaineers, obviously. Got the big old helmet behind me, supporting my team. I will always support them no matter how bad they are. Okay, I don't want to say that there's no chance in this game, because there is a chance. Every game to a certain point is winnable. But this is going to be the toughest environment we've had to play in this year. And with the quarterback things that are going on right now, and Ty Edwards potentially maybe not playing, Bear Bachmeier playing as good as he's been playing, their run unit looks solid again. I think BYU wins. I hate going against the Mountaineers. I really do. But for the sake of reality, I think Mountaineers lose this game. We want to be competitive, and we want to put some good things on film. We want guys to come out and perform and improve, and I think they will. However, I think BYU wins, and I also think BYU probably covers the spread. I could see a 35-13 game, BYU.
Okay. I'm in the same boat. While the game is winnable, especially if you get Ty Edwards back, it's going to be tough, especially considering, the atmosphere you're getting ready to walk into on a short week, a late night game. So you're dealing with a time change. Can you get your sleep right and get your play time clock right? And then that doesn't even include, the altitude of playing in the Rocky Mountains of Utah. So everything is stacked against West Virginia. Going to be tough. I will say I like our chances better here with Ty Edwards back, if he is back, than I did against Utah without Ty Edwards. And so while I think we have a better chance to find a way against BYU than we did Utah, I'm still going to go BYU. And my score prediction is going to remain the same, 31-17. Maybe Khalil can find a way to spark the offense a little bit, or the defense can find a way to get some kind of points of their own. It's going to be one of those games that's maybe close in the second quarter or up to halftime, and BYU just finds a way to pull farther away in the second half. So I'm going to go BYU 31-17. I hope I'm wrong and Khalil Wilkins has a Pat White type legacy game on the road, but it's going to be tough. So BYU.
You don't understand how much I want to be wrong.
Me too. I do too. I don't. Dude, I'll be honest. I'll even go as far to say that I just want the game to be close, because three blowouts in a row is rough. I don't care if we lose. I just want the game to be competitive.
Yeah, and it seems almost statistically impossible that we lose 3 straight games by over 30 points. That's just not kosher. Even in 2007, that wouldn't have been kosher.
It's been rough, man.
It's been a rough year. However, I think we have the potential to improve. I think me and you can both agree on that. Hopefully, Khalil can find something. Hopefully. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning into this live edition of the Cold Country Podcast. All of you guys watching, Make sure to go over to our YouTube channel. If you're watching on YouTube, awesome. If you're watching on X or Instagram, please go over to our YouTube channel. Give us a thumbs up. It really helps us out in the algorithm. Make sure to subscribe. Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. We will respond to them. Also, head over to our Instagram. Follow our X. We're almost to 500 followers, and it's almost been a year since we started. So that is amazing. I couldn't have imagined having 500 followers starting this thing out. And also, don't forget about our Spotify. We have all of our episodes over there. And I think that I will put this one over on our Spotify in case you want to listen back to it. For you guys that haven't watched yet, you can listen to it there. So again, thank you guys so much for watching. From me and from Tyler, we will see you on the next episode.
Goodbye, America.